I mean, this is a very interesting question. Actually, it's something I'd really like to know the answer to, because I have an old wooden house, and some years ago we started some renovation work, and I kind of think I wish I'd known the answer to this earlier. Not that there's any particular problems now, and I might actually say a little bit more about that later. But there's some. I mean, you can, of course, if you're putting cladding on a building, you can have different profiles, and these profiles have different characteristics. I don't know whether you can see these. We probably can't see them very clearly at the moment, but maybe I can point this at you, Callum. You can now.
I can see them.
You can see them. Good. Okay.
I can see you. Can't see them.
But I mean, of these profiles, let's say if we were now going to we're going to use these profiles in some horizontal cladding on a building, which one would you choose?
That is a really interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just looking at that, there's a whole bunch of shapes there. I think we'll just go through some of the things that we've got there. We've got quite a few tongued and grooved. And this is a personal view about tongued and grooved. I haven't shown any chamfers, I haven't shown any edges. The first problem you're going to get with any tongued and grooved is that moisture, if it gets in, if you're not protecting against that, once it's in there, it's going to be a hell of a job coming out. And I think you might have something to say about some really bad practices for stopping the moisture going in. So if that's the kind of design you're using in exterior applications, I think you're setting yourself up for failure, personally. We have other designs that are more this sort of shape. We still have some sort of trap there, and it depends on this gap. If you have too small a gap, you're going to get capillary action. And once the water's gone in through capillary, it's one hell of a job to get it out again. If you've got bigger gaps, really you need to be designing for airflows, I think. So the sorts of cladding that might have this sort of design, where the rain is falling there, we have a gap, we have an airflow, but another important detail is that we have a drip point there. Yep. And if that drips on that bit of wood, it's going to fall out. Yep. So that's the obvious way around for doing that. These sorts of things, I think it's not as good as that, but it certainly isn't as bad as that. But you're still setting yourself up for creating these sorts of, more here really, these sorts of points where water will just sit. So you want to avoid that. So the critical thing is to kind of design it in a way, or to use products that allow the water to be shed as quickly as possible. Shedding is important. If it does get in, you want to have a mechanism for it to come out. Really, you want to have, there's two schools of thought. You want to have an airflow behind in order to stop if the moisture does get in. Usually it's wind-driven rain's the problem. Then you want to have some mechanism for it to dry out. Some people will try and make sure it never gets in the first place, with varying degrees of success. Another thing that bothers me about this kind of tongued and grooved design is that, and I have seen examples of this, people don't leave enough of a gap. And the wood, surprisingly enough, wood shrinks and swells. I mean, it's one of these things you think, did they not think of this? And the wood swells, and the gap, if there is a gap, disappears, and the boards just push themselves off the wall. So I would tend to avoid those sorts of things for exterior. So looking at all the ones we've got here, we need to be thinking about drips. So those sorts of edges are going to make sure that if the water's collecting there, then the drip's going to fall off there. So you certainly don't want to have it the other way round. You want to have the drip on the outside. But of all the ones I'm looking at there, we're looking at a board that's feather edged, and I think that's probably the best of those designs, personally. Have you got any views on this? I know you have views on it because you've just done your house. I mean, I can maybe add to that, because I mean, flip the chart.
I can.
I'll do it.
Okay,
it's an honour, sir.
Well, of course it is, but no, I mean we had. I mean the point you made about the fact that people trying to seal it. I mean, I think it's totally impossible. What we actually had.
You can't fight nature.
You can't fight nature. These are not horizontal boards, but these were vertical boards, and they were kind of butted directly. They were tongue and groove, and firstly, they were panels that had been I guess, kiln dried down to a very low moisture content for interior applications,
Right.
and they were butted tightly together. So they splayed out like that. For a first
Surprise, surprise. Yeah.
Then they were butted directly against this horizontal piece, which had a
Nice moisture trap.
nice moisture trap. If we look at it from this angle, the panels were butted directly like that, with a fillet of
Silicone.
silicone, with an impermeable coating and directly nailed to the board. So,
Right, so just about everything you
everything
can do
you
wrong.
could do wrong, yes. So when we took these off, the moisture content, I took the moisture content, and it was pretty high.
Yeah.
And on the south-facing wall, where it was very warm,
Yeah.
there was quite a lot of rot decay
Yeah.
in there. So the solution that we actually came up with was to replace this solid wooden piece here with
It's not a sill beam or anything like that. It's just a piece of wood.
it was just a piece of wood. Yeah,
Right,
it was
okay.
decorative.
Right.
With a metal. Let's see if I can draw this now. With a drip point here,
Yep.
and then the verticals, so the logs were here, like this, something like this. Not quite like that, I'm sure. And then there was, as you mentioned just a minute ago, an air gap behind, so that would allow the air to flow.
Right.
With a drip point here,
Okay.
and a good air gap. So the rain, I mean, it's south facing mostly, so there's quite a lot of driven rain, and it flows off there, down here. A little bit of a gap here, and what I haven't shown here is that these are on stone base here, and you've got a fairly, I get 50 to 80 centimetres, depending on where we are in the house, from the ground.
Right.
And this was installed 15 years ago,
Right.
and it's still in totally perfect condition.
Because it's been done properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is the kind of knowledge we were talking about earlier that would have been second nature to people when they built these houses. Although we do say, even with historical structures, examples of bad practice and bad work. On another topic, got absolutely nothing to do with this, but I just came across this at a conference many, many years ago. It's just this idea, this metal flashing, that made me think of it. Termites are becoming increasingly a problem in Europe, and this design, I think it was used in Africa, had a kind of masonry base, and the termites would climb up the masonry, and then there was, I can't remember what type of wood it was here, some sort of cladding system, I can't remember what it was, and the termites would obviously like to get hold of that and eat it, but they had a metal flashing system, and it went something like that. And the termites came up here, and they couldn't get around the angle. It's ever so clever. So you don't need any preservative in the wood, and it's that kind of thinking. I just think it's just, that's so clever.
So it's actually, so it's basically the simple solutions are often the best, basically. Yeah. So I think it's true that, I mean, we've talked about it, devil is in the details. So often you need to think the whole thing through, and how to keep the wood dry, and how to, if it does get wet, then how does it dry out?
Don't have moisture traps. You might have moisture, but don't create moisture traps. People just try and stop the moisture getting in the first place, and it isn't always a practical solution.
No, because I mean, that was another feature of the panelling that we removed, was the fact that it being coated with this impermeable covering, but because the water had wicked up the grain, it had swollen and had broken the coating, and so more rain get. And once it's in there, you can't get it out, and there was no way for it to kind of come away from it.
So how long had this panelling been in place for?
Fortunately, not that long. I mean, maybe no more than about 2 or 3 years. So had it been there for much longer, I think we probably would not have saved the house. Yeah. So fortunately, there was not much rot. It was just high moisture content.
Right. But it was a very high hazard environment.
Yeah. Gosh. So yes, and somebody very cleverly said to me that of course old wooden houses that are in existence today are only the ones that have been designed well and properly maintained. So,
yes, absolutely.
So there's something about those we should learn from them.
Yeah. Don't know if we answered the question now. I'd go for that one. The feather edge board myself.
I didn't check what we've got. I was going to.
Is it vertical? It's horizontal cladding, is it?
Both horizontal and
Okay.
vertical. Yeah, yeah. It's a bit more complicated. Than it needs
If
to be.
only this person was here, we could ask them whether they're going to do horizontal or vertical.